Heavy metal
My
rock.
global mind.
I'm Robert Cavuto, and today on My Global Mind, I'm pleased to be speaking with Andy Timmons to discuss the release of his new album, Recovery, that came out this past February. Andy, welcome. Another great masterpiece you got on your hands.
Another and masterpiece in the same sentence. I'm honored by that. I appreciate your kind words. No, it's always great and cathartic to release something out into the world. I said into the wild, into the
Yeah.
world, and hopefully people resonate with it. That you of course as an artist hope they will, but it always starts just kind of as a selfish project. I'm just trying to create the music
Yeah.
that reflects where I am musically, emotionally, and all these things. And so, I'm just trying to make the music that I need to hear and that I want to express. So the fact that people are receiving it so warmly has been just amazing,
Awesome.
and I'm honored by that.
The title, Recovery,
Mm,
it came to me last week while I was
yeah,
listening to it. I said,
yeah.
this is a perfect recovery from all the people on social media yelling, all the people in their cars yelling, all the people at my job yelling. So this was like, I didn't want to listen
Well,
to any music where anybody was screaming and yelling at me. So I put this on and I was like,
right.
it's a ethereal. The whole album is ethereal, but it was just a
Yeah.
nice break from being yelled at by anybody. So I really enjoyed it. What's the true meaning behind Recovery?
Well, that's you covered a lot of it. I mean, it's just everything that we deal with in our lives and in the world and what we encounter. And there's our lives are in a constant state of recovery. And a synonym would be healing,
Yeah,
just trying to get back to a natural state. And what is a natural state anymore? And so, I mean, it's so, yeah, and there's the overt and more obvious, recovery in the substance sense. And I've had my struggles there in the past, both with alcohol and pharmaceutical, just prescription stuff along the way that
yeah,
becomes dangerous if you're not careful. And as a coping mechanism, I was using them in the wrong way. But recovery for me is getting back to music being that healing force and not needing
yeah,
all these other things. And music's always been that since from the cradle. I've always had that love of music, and so if you're here watching now, it's likely that you're the same type of individual where music means a lot to us. The guitar specifically in my world, but it's merely a delivery system, but it's what I love to receive as well. I've been very much a fan of guitar centric music since the 60s when I was born. But yeah, just music in general is that safe place. It can lift you up. It can give you the safe place to feel the depths of the things that we go through and all points in between. So for me, it's that really necessary respite and distraction and another world to go to.
yeah.
One of the last records I released was called "Theme from a Perfect World,"
Mhm.
which is a thinly veiled reference to utopia, but it's also electric truth, theme from a perfect world. It's what music represents to me.
Right.
It's the thing that's been the constant in my life that I can rely on, that I know
Yeah.
is a safe place that I can trust. And so to put music out there that I'm hoping reflects that and provides that for other people is an honor to do. And I get that kind of feedback for many years now with people that resonate with certain things that I write or that I play. And that's all you can hope for. That to me is the ultimate success.
Yeah, it's true.
I'll never, and I don't aspire to be the famous, uber wealthy kind of individual. There's things about that seem attractive, but I've nipped at the tail of a little bit of these things and realized that has nothing to do with what's really important to me. And I feel very fortunate that sometimes in the guitar circles, I might be known by a certain amount of people, and that's rewarding and healthy. But it's I can go to the grocery and not be hounded. You know what I mean? So, I'm just honored to continue to do what I love to do,
Yeah.
and that anybody's resonating with it is ultimately success for me.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could understand completely. I'm not a sports guy. I haven't been a
Right.
sports guy since high school. So
Right.
music is everything to me, playing
Yep.
guitar as
Sure.
well as listening to it. There's always
Hmm.
music in the car, in the house, or
Sure.
whatever I'm doing. So, and just all different types of it are healing for different purposes. And
Yep.
this was the
Exactly.
perfect time. This album came out at the perfect time when I needed it the most. So,
Well, and that's another addiction I think we're all facing is our phone and our
yeah.
and the internet. And I went through a period of pretty, high anxiousness. I don't know, it might have been 5 or 6 months ago. And
Mhm.
so I decided I needed to try to eliminate any unwarranted or unneeded stress in my life. And that included, reaching out to some folks that maybe I had unresolved issues with,
Mm.
maybe just something that I've been avoiding the confrontation of,
Right,
but
right.
but needed to happen, but by not addressing it makes it worse.
Yep.
So I started having conversations with people, but I also very deliberately got away from all any news or any social
Yeah.
media, any contact, not to I want to put my head in the sand and not be aware of what's happening in the world, but I was paying too much attention, and that all that weight
Yes. Very heavy.
and all the negativity, even if it's not overtly negative, how it makes you feel can be, meaning just all the social media
Right.
kind of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff out there that can just make you feel less than. You know what I mean?
I
So
agree. I could appreciate that
so
sentiment.
that's another part of recovery I went through, and in extracting myself from access to those things, but also trying to repair some other things in my life. I mean, it was pretty amazing, and how quickly my mental state and emotions improved.
It's great.
With everything, it's about balance. As an artist of any kind, or public figure that relies on other people, responding to what you do, there's a certain amount of that that's necessary.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to be involved. And of course, doing interviews and press like this in regard to a release is ultimately important. And I love being able to have these dialogues. It's very healthy.
Yeah.
But it's all just, in modicum. You gotta balance everything. And so
For
I
sure.
try not to overpost. I don't want to be the guy. Here's my breakfast from two, or whatever. And
From
my
Italy.
life's amazing. I'd rather post more, some stuff about gigs, but also tell people when things aren't good. Man, I'm having a hard day today, and people respond to that honesty and that directness. So I just try to
That's
keep
true.
a healthy balance. That's what it's all about. We got to find what's right for each of ourselves.
Great sentiment. You start off the album with Elegy for Jeff,
Yeah.
Jeff Beck.
Mm.
So tell me a little bit about how he influenced you and what this track means to you personally.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, Jeff Beck, for so many of us guitar players, just, set such a high bar. And I've said it over and over, but one of the things I admire most about Jeff, not only, his most recent recordings of, especially the Emotion and Commotion record, when he
Mhm.
really was able to really touch the strings in certain ways that were a direct conduit to, touching your heartstrings. He could have, stopped after Shapes and Things with the Yardbirds and already have been this historical figure, the way he was already manipulating feedback and distortion, pre-Hendrix. It's pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. But he never repeated itself. He kept, reinventing, or kept pushing the envelope in order to not repeat what he had done. And so the trajectory of his career is just astounding, how he kept changing and evolving. And so it's not just the actual physicality and what he achieved in producing those emotions on the guitar, but also just the overall, whatever you want to call it, ethos of how he, you
Mhm.
worked as an artist. Sometimes he just put it down and went away from the guitar for a while and did other things. He had, obviously, a very infamous relationship with cars and
Yeah.
restoration, and as a mechanic and as a enthusiast, and that's so healthy too, to have all these other interests.
It's very true.
I'm kind of boring. My all my hobbies and interests are music centric, and
Yeah, me too.
but that's me. So, but yeah, he just I always say that he kind of set the bar as far as, what the guitar has potential to be as an instrument of expression. And I think he and everybody are just kind of scratching the surface. It's a fairly, the electric guitar is a young instrument. It's, from
Yeah.
the 40s and 50s of when things started to kind of develop. So I'd like to think there's a long way to go. And I know personally, I personally have a long way to go, no matter what level anybody gets to. If they're being honest, they know there's a huge amounts to go.
Yeah.
And there's immediate evidence anytime you turn on your social media feed and witness all these amazing guitar players, or
Yes.
just everything that's come before us.
Very true.
We'll always marvel at Wes and Holdsworth and all our heroes.
That's great.
So keep going, keep learning, and but the Elegy was a nice way to start the record because
I thought so too.
as I was writing material for this record, he passed, and it just felt fitting because of how much he means to me personally and all of us. So actually, really, the first two tracks, so Elegy is the most overt homage to Jeff, but then the next track, Recovery, was actually very much influenced by the Hammerhead track on his Emotion and
Oh,
Commotion
okay.
record. I just wanted something rocking but uplifting. I wanted
Good song.
in the sense of recovery. It should be, there's darkness there, but also there's this light that we can, push through all these things, and something good's going to come. So it's jumping ahead there in the track listing, but yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
it's great response.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever asked you this before. We talked about it a lot. We've talked a lot of times, but what's
Yeah.
the set of disciplines required to create instrumental music? I know that
Hmm.
there's one song you sing on, but for the
Yeah.
most part, all the other tracks are instrumental.
Yeah, it's I don't know that discipline applies to my life in general.
Hmm.
I'm a bit of a free spirit when it comes to how I write, when I write, and how it all happens. The most meaningful tunes to me just kind of happen naturally. And the ideas will come. I'll recognize something as being something worth pursuing. I'll make some type of audio documentation of the idea, and then it's up to me to finish and try to flesh out. Some things come quickly. Some things may take years, to
Wow.
get it to the point where I think, okay, this is actually something now.
Yeah, yeah.
But the good stuff usually comes pretty directly and fairly quickly. But it's just recognizing, what I'm trying to say, what I would like to hear. Like I said at the onset of the interview, where it's very selfish. I'm just, writing and improvising a solo is really the same thing. It's just, the improvisation is that minute's music in a minute's time, where the song may take a year for that same minute of music, but it's the same, intent. I think we're just trying to create something that we want to hear, and then, of course, you hope that other people resonate with.
Right.
But the discipline is only it's setting my bar of what I think is good, and that all comes from years of loving music and all those things that I love. And I'll never write God Only Knows or Yesterday or Nessun Dorma, but those things are all back there. And why not try to write something that good? Why not, not to emulate directly, but to at least have that bar of like, these things are possible. Another human being did this. Why can't I just keep aspiring to reach that level?
That's great. Was there any song on Recovery where it you feel that it's exactly where you are as a guitarist now?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think about that. I mean, I'm always fond of the ballads. There's
Hmm.
things like "Why Must It Be So," "Arizona Sunset," which is a very simple tune, the last tune
Yeah,
on the record. That's continuing to get a lot of positive feedback from people. I think they're
very
resonating with.
Beatlesque, right? That's the last
It's yeah,
track.
it's always Beatlesque for me, for sure, and just yeah, the last chord is meant to sound exactly like the ending of "Let It Be."
Yes.
Yeah, pretty. I guess that one's Captain Obvious, but that's my DNA. Um, Oh, that's a good boy, oh boy, oh boy. But yeah, there's just dabbles and bits of all the things that I'm trying to do better in each track. I'm not sure if there's one that's my pinnacle of any of that. But there's moments in each of them where I go, oh, that's a good note.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other notes like, oh man, I wish I would have. But overall, I'd say my batting average is pretty good on the record. And but there is, there's certain notes that I go like, man, I feel like I got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
then
great.
again, that just keeps you going. So I'm like, I want more moments like that, or how can I keep using the word batting average. I'm not sure why I'm getting all sports, but I had some interviews yesterday, and that was batting average because it's like you're never 100%, and there's just varying degrees of good gigs, medium gigs, not so good gigs, exceptional gigs, and your perception may be completely different than the listener. You know,
Right.
it's so many times what my band talks about, man, you can feel like you had a great gig and it's like crickets in between songs, or you're struggling and it's not quite going good, and people after the gig are like, man, that's the best gig I've ever seen you do. It's like, wow, you never know because it's
Yeah.
hard for you to be objective because what you're trying to do and trying to get out, you've got it in your head, and
Right. Right.
maybe it's not coming out the right way, but maybe it's coming out in a way that's cool to others. But um, but I'm gonna keep practicing so I get a higher batting average. I'm gonna keep going to the batting cage, man.
Great.
That's my happiest time of the day. I get my coffee going in the morning and get in the office and play my guitar. You know, if I can get a good hour of just practice before anything else happens, that's when I'm happiest.
So
The past
that's
week's
like
been
the
crazy. We had that tour in Italy, and then I got
right.
back and then all home life stuff and then all the just lovely promotion for the record. So I'm not on my practice regimen at the moment, but it's time to get back on it because we head back out to Asia in
Right.
March 19th. We head out for
Yeah.
a couple of weeks of gigs. So
12 days. Yeah.
busy, busy time. Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah.
the reminder. I got
Yeah.
12 days of
I
tighten
just
up.
looked at the date and I go, yeah, it's 12 days. But
That's
no, I
soon.
appreciate you
That's
squeezing
real.
this interview
Oh
in
no,
between
this is
that.
great. It was funny to release a record on the 14th of February. Then we left for Italy on the 15th, so there was really no time
Yep.
to do what you would normally do to set up a record and promote. But our lovely friend Steve Karras was kind enough to figure out windows and help me figure out how
Yeah,
to get it all in there. So
he's
thanks
great.
for taking the time again. Thank you,
Oh,
Robert.
my pleasure.
Yeah,
Do
man.
you feel there's a tightrope you have to walk between the relevance of rock, blues, jazz, and
Mm.
fusion traditions while trying
Yeah.
to carve your own distinct sound?
Well, these are things I don't think about, to be
Mhm.
honest. I think that yeah, the bottom line always gets back to what do I want to hear, you know? I mean, I think again, I'm a little close to it, but it's just whatever arc my career and music and playing is taking, I'm so close to it, it's hard for me to recognize. I hear that there's some of my playing that's definitely evolving greatly.
Mhm.
And there are times and there's some moments on this record where I kind of purposely went back a little bit. There's some shreddy bits here and there because I know there's a lot of my fans that come
Yeah.
from the 80s era or my earliest of instrumental records, and I love playing like that. I don't shun any part of my career. I mean, it's all valid. It's all, you know, it's just what was happening and what felt right for me at the
Mhm.
time. Maybe it's not my taste to produce that kind of music all the time now. Of course, the same guy, listening to whatever records he was listening to at 22 years old isn't what I'm listening to now. But there are some records I still listen to from that time. But
Yeah.
I think that your tastes are going to broaden and mature. In some cases, maybe somebody are going to stick to the first three Metallica records their whole life. Zero wrong with that,
Yeah.
But for me, it's like that's why I mentioned Jeff Beck's thing because he would just do what his heart dictated. Todd Rundgren's another guy like this, where I'm a huge fan of his playing, his writing, everything, but I don't love every record that he does. But I love that he does it,
Yeah.
and what that means is that he's just making the music that he feels driven to do. And as an artist myself, I relate to that so much because I'm sure somebody that loves Groove or Die may not dig my bossa nova record. It's like, and that's okay. I don't expect everybody to love all these things that I do, but I would be dishonest if I didn't do them, and if I thought I had to chase some type of preconception. Kind of circling back to your actual question, any preconception of what I think is expected. I saw a bit of that in my Danger years of, a label that, well, it needs to be more like this, or it needs to be
Yeah.
like, and so if you're chasing the tail of something that came before you in emulation form, then you're fighting a losing battle.
Sure.
But I take all these influences, like what Jeff has had on me, from everybody from Ace Frehley to Pat Metheny to Chopin.
Mhm.
It's all in here, and in any given moment might come out in a way that may not be immediately recognizable to
Yeah.
people hearing it, but I'll go, oh, I know where I got that, or I might understand certain things on a much different level just because I can hear it. Even sometimes, I'll hear a track that I haven't heard in years of another artist, and I'll go, oh my gosh! Like when I went back and re-listened to Tony McAlpine's Maximum Security record,
You okay?
which I listened to at one point in the late '80s. I listened to a lot. It was a really great sounding record. Still is a great sounding record.
Is that
And
the
I
one
heard
is that the one where he's in the room? The picture cover album cover, he's like in a rubber room.
I
I don't remember.
I don't remember that being in Maximum Security. It was kind of a drawing of some sort of a dark character. I'm not
I
100%
gotta go look
sure.
it up. I gotta
And
go.
there may be
Yeah.
different covers, but it had a great guest appearance by George Lynch. There was a song called King's Cup and a couple of tracks that my roommate at the time made a tape for me of a couple of the songs on there.
Yeah.
And I heard a couple of phrases that I went, "Oh my God, that's where I play something similar to that or may have played something exactly like that." But sometimes you may get something internalized and not even realize it years later, it coming out in certain ways. But it's deep in there,
Yeah.
and that's the fine line that has to be paid attention to with songwriting is unconscious plagiarism. And George Harrison went through that with My Sweet Lord and He's So Fine by the Chiffons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Melodies are identical and the chord changes. I'm sure he didn't set out to rip off this girl group from the early 60s, but it was clear that he had heard that. And in his writing process, that blended in and, where he thought he was going on his own.
And nobody in his crew made the connection.
Well, that's kind of weird because at some point somebody might have said, but that's why Paul McCartney, when he wrote Yesterday, the famous story is he dreamed it, woke up, found the chords and the melody on the piano, and then played it for everybody because he recognized this is really good. This can't be my song, and he kept,
Yeah.
he went to George Martin, he went to John, he went to all these people. Does this sound like anything to you? And everybody's like, no, don't recognize it. So I go through the same thing too. It's like, oh gosh, I hope I didn't, steal this from somebody. But there are moments that are very ish in some of my songs.
Yeah.
Sometimes very, very consciously, and sometimes I'll go, oh boy, that's a little too close there, whatever it might be. But again, with the finite amount of notes and harmony at our current awareness disposal, it's impossible not to have similarities from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched upon improvisation.
Mm.
Um, when in your instrumental writing does improvisation come into play? Is it the
Yeah.
improv of noodling or practicing, or does
Yeah.
it come in and say, I really have to come up with a solo or a part here? I'm just going to improvise it.
Yeah, it happens at all points. Like
Yeah.
I made the correlation earlier that songwriting is improvisation. Initially,
Yes.
you're kind of some ideas come when I'm really not thinking too much, and I'll just like you say, it could be noodling, practicing, playing, whatever you want to consider it. But there may be a line that comes that go, oh, I recognize it, and that may start to a formation of a direction or
Yeah.
a set of harmony. There's so many ways it can come. And then, yeah, of course, there are times when, okay, this is a quote unquote solo section. And I will always 100%, make the attempt of improvisation when I record with the band. And sometimes you get lucky and things happen and you're 100% happy with it.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of an ethos that I was, instilled with and imbued with when I was growing up from the session guys, and jazz musicians. Well, it's got to be, fresh and in the moment and first take. And
Right.
again, that's great if you're on that level, and I've been lucky that sometimes that's the case. But I also, when I recorded the Resolution record, this goes almost 20 years ago now. I'd recorded the basic tracks with the band. I would have improvised solos like I would normally do, and just didn't like any of it. I was so bored with the process of rhythm guitars and then solos so when I made the decision to only do one guitar performance, so no overdubs, no rhythm guitars, just that one guitar, bass and drums, I'd by that time I'd listened to the rough tracks over and over. You get attached to certain things and like, oh, certain bits of that solo I like. But I gave myself the latitude and the permission, so to speak, to, okay, I'm going to learn what I improvised that I liked
Yeah.
and then compose around it what I would rather have heard in the context. And it was really torturous to do it like that
Wow.
because it's like, it's
You're on the
almost
spot,
like
right? It's
almost reverse composing. And so what I would literally do is I would learn those bits that I dug, incorporate that into other improvisation. I would play some of them hundreds of times trying to find good moments over and over and over. And sometimes it was like I'd find, so what ended up happening was, I had bits that I liked, but then I, used my composer's ear and like, what would really be the best way to connect all this? And so it inevitably would have me come up with things that I'd never played before. So it was really the best education for me. I really had to reinvent how I played on that record, you know, voicing everything, chords and melody. How am I going to represent this harmony when I've only got my buddy Mike on the bass, normally playing single notes? It was a great heavy weight to lift and to also just figure out how to make it work. But from that moment, it's like, oh, that was the first record I ever made where I went back, you know, I could listen back and go, okay, you know, there wasn't the cringy moments of like,
Yeah.
oh man, everything was cool except for that, you know, not every, there's bits of improvisation still on that record and in certain sections, but just about every note, by the time I recorded it, I knew exactly the sound, the placement, the articulation, the intent, the arc, the dynamic of every single note. And I worked really hard to do that. And so there are still some things, there's some pieces I'll treat like that. There's some moments on the recovery record that are the exact same process. And so that's, you know, I had to get past that stigma of like, it's not cool to do that. But for me, it is, because this is forever, you know.
Yeah.
And I may
No.
play them the same way live, or I might just, you know, extemporize and do my own version each night. But there are some that I think are truly great compositions within a composition.
Okay.
And you know,
That's a great
but
answer.
you know, and so for my this last tour that we did in Italy, there's usually a record that I'll listen to and I'll obsess about on a tour, and it's kind of my North Star as
Hmm.
far as, you know, okay, this is when I'm getting ready and I've got, you know, 20 minutes to get up and get out the hotel door or whatever. This is just a busy time when you're on the road. But there's always like one record, and it was a record called Chet Baker Sings Again, which was one of his later life recordings that I've always really loved. And the reason I love Chet is because there's no licks. He's just always in the moment and always navigating in the most melodic way. And for me, that's what I'm trying to do. So in the moments in the show, when there's plenty of spaces where I have that are completely improvised, I played better every night because of listening to Chet and hearing him navigating in that same way. I
Almost
still
like it's
present.
okay. It's almost okay. It gave you the permission to do what you had to do.
Well, in that way, it's like, you know, I'm always you know, inspired by in the moment improvisation. But
Hmm.
there'll be songs like, let me think of a good example. Like if we do Gone, that in solo, you know, I'll play it like I did on the record, just because I think it's got an emotional arc to it. I'm not going to do it better, so but I'm going to play it very in the moment as far as the connection with the band, connection with the audience. It's always going to have an in the moment thing from the spinal cord. I'm going to be
Yeah.
tapped in. But I do like the moments also where I don't have any preconceived speech. I'm just going to tell it like it is in the moment. So I like the balance of all those things.
Great. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for your time today, Andy.
Oh man, it goes quick, doesn't
It does. I
it?
want to be respectful. I don't know what else you
No,
got. So,
well, I got it. Yeah, they've got me every 30 minutes today. But
yep,
thank you,
yep.
Robert. Always great questions. Always a great vibe, and I
And
appreciate you very much.
safe travels to in the next couple of days. All right.
Thank you. Good luck with the Holoflash, man. How
Thank
cool
you.
is that? Looks
Thank you
great,
so
man.
much. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Rob. Talk to you soon, man.
Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Heavy metal
My
rock.
global mind.